What a privilege to have a man that I respect more than the world itself. My father, Professor Paul Zulu, on my podcast today. Sawubona, Prof.
Yeah.
Sawubona. What a privilege to have you here. I don't even know where to begin, but yeah, we are going to have a very nice conversation, understanding who this great man is and what he has done for the society. Baba, some people build for themselves, and then there are those who build so others can rise. For me, today's podcast is a story about legacy. It's not measured by what you gain, but by what you choose to give. So today, Baba, we are going to go back to the 1980s. South Africa was fracturing. Classrooms were emptying. As uncertainty had moved into the streets like it owned them. And yet, in the middle of all of it, there were those who chose a different kind of courage. It was not the loud kind of courage, but it's the courage that shows up on a Saturday morning when everyone else has given up. I have the profound honor today of sitting with you, Professor Paul Zulu, a man who worked alongside other Black social workers, and you built a Saturday school in the 1980s and called children back to education when the world was telling them to stay away. I remember in those times, the rhetoric that was going around was struggle first, education last. So for me, today is more than a conversation. Today for me is a testimony of sacrifice, a testimony of conviction, of the quiet, unshakable belief that a better future is possible. And even then, in the 1980s, where the struggle was the order of the day, that a better future was possible before anyone could prove it. Because for me, Baba, the greatest legacies are really the empires that we build. The greatest legacies are the lives that we refuse to abandon. The lives that we choose we are going to make something out of. And that's exactly what you did in the 80s, Baba, when we built that Saturday school. But before we go to that conversation, I would like you to introduce yourself to our viewers and just tell them a little bit of who you are.
Gosh, that's a difficult one. I am Paul Zulu, an academic at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. My present status is that of emeritus professor in the School of Social Sciences. And I run a research unit called the Maurice Webb Race Relations Unit. It's not only a research unit, it's also a building unit where young researchers, and particularly postdocs, are being groomed to research and publish. This is really who I am at present, other than being a father of 6 children. Yeah.
Welcome, Baba. And I'm one of those 6 that he's referring to. And honestly, for me, it's such an honor to be sitting here in this lifetime and be able to talk to you and get to know you a little bit more. Now, I want us to go back, Baba, to the 1980s. I remember very well, I was a young child, was still at primary school. But I remember being raised by Ubaba that was very passionate about education. And I don't remember any point in time in my life where I didn't have people that were coming in, either tutoring us or making sure that we understand exactly what is happening. Even in my own home, when I was growing up, you and Mom were very, very clear about wanting to educate us so that we are enlightened as Black children. So I want us to go back to that era. What was happening in your community at the height of apartheid?
Well, really, that's a very broad question. What was happening in my community at the height of apartheid? A lot of things were happening. To start with, there was everyday life. People woke up and went to work. That's one important aspect. But also there was this huge concern. There was turmoil in the 1980s, especially after 1984. The system had completely broken down and a new normative order was emerging. To people like me, who had a bit of an education, what we were very clear about was that the new normative order should not be destructive to society. So we tried by all means to maintain what we called a normal order in society. And this is where probably the whole issue of interest in education came in. Not that one had not been interested in education for decades. I mean, we are products of the mission stations, where as one grew up as a child, the emphasis was, if you do not get educated, you are not going to improve your lot in society. You are not going to contribute in society. The most respected persons in the village were teachers and abafundis, the priests. Now, then following Amakosa and other Christian leaders, that's what we grew up knowing. And those were people who, in essence, directed the normative system in society. So the 1980s were almost a complete breakdown of this normative order. And we met, well, to be honest, I spoke to a few friends. I'm not a social worker by training myself. Social work became an avenue, a vehicle, because social work had SABSWA, the South African Black Social Workers Association. And I felt that if one wanted to be effective, one had to have a base. So as a social scientist, I joined SABSWA, not as a social worker, but to use it as a vehicle to try and promote certain values, and one such value was education. If the dictum was liberation first and education later, we believed you could not be liberated unless you had some form of education. Yeah.
Then, Baba, you started Saturday school from your own pocket.
Well, the Saturday school was more or less an incidental development from others. The start was to try and use church halls in the afternoons to teach the kids who would be willing to come, particularly the kids at the completion level of high school, your grades 8, 9s, and 10s. In those days, it was grade 8, 9, and 10 to matriculate. So we spoke to church authorities and used church halls to teach in the afternoons. That, A, the demand was so high. Secondly, it was not easy to control the times because schools closed at different times in the afternoons. Therefore, we found that, I shouldn't use the word disruptive, but it was not very constructive to organization. We then decided to go. At that time, I was working for the University of Zululand as a researcher in the Center for Social Research and Documentation. And we asked the University of Zululand, Umlazi campus, where I was located, if we could make use of the halls on the Saturday, on Saturdays. They agreed, and we were also using Mangosu to Technicon. Organization was not so easy because the University of Zululand was an extramural campus where students came in the afternoons and even on Saturday mornings. So there were times when we couldn't use the halls, etc. And that's when we moved to the University of Natal in those days in the Howard College campus. And they were very amenable. Not only were they amenable, the architecture at the university, the lecture halls and their arrangement made it very easy. They gave us a building called the Desmond Clarence Building, which is the science block today at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. It was Natal then. It had sufficient lecture halls to enable us to work on the grade 8, 9s, and 10s without any problem. So with 9 lecture halls. But there was also another problem. It was, the year has 52 Saturdays. The school curriculum extends over 10 to 11 months before the exams are written. So how does one constrict an annual curriculum into 40 odd Saturdays? We organized a workshop, called for educationists. I remember Duncan Hindle, who later became the head of education nationally as the DG of education. He organized lecturers to come and participate on this. And we had a weekend workshop developing a philosophy and a methodology of teaching a school curriculum which extended over 10 months and constricting it into 40 odd Saturdays. That was, yeah. But we also needed funding, and this is where SAPSWA became a large asset, because using the banner of SAPSWA, we could approach particularly the private sector, and they came on board. Unilever was one of them. Protec was another private sector organization. And using these as financial resources, we were able to give some token, seriously some token, in those days, if a Saturday school facilitator, teacher, lecturer, call them anything, and 5 rands, it was quite a good sum of money to earn for the man. So that's how we started it. Yeah.
So, Baba, you went through lens to make sure that the school happens, from church to the University of Zululand, to Natal University at that time, to using subsidized vehicle to get funding. What made you believe that bringing children back to school still mattered in that time? And that's the first part of my question. And why did you feel it was important for them to go back, to be at school and to be educated?
Well, in the first instance, the school is not only a teaching institution, a proper school. It's also a character molding institution. That's the foundations of the school. Secondly, getting the kids together, you have a captive audience for whatever values you want to inculcate in society. One of the values I had learned as a child was that while the group mattered, the self probably determined its own fate. I never ever believed that my fate would be decided other than by myself, even as a child, as I grew up. And therefore, teaching this ethos or inculcating this ethos onto our young children, to me, was very, very essential. Secondly, while the struggle raged on, it was extremely destructive to the societal norms. I mean, children can do that much. I did not believe that they could lead. And the 1980s sort of wanted to create an impression that children could lead. And they couldn't. Yeah.
So that was your main reason why. So you speak about a lot of turmoil that was happening at that time when you were building this thing. Did you ever meet with any resistance? And if yes, how did you overcome?
Oh, a lot, from different quarters. To start with, KwaZulu-Natal was so hugely divided politically. You had the United Democratic Front, UDF, on the one side, thought to be highly aligned to the ANC, which it was. I shouldn't attribute this to the UDF. There was also people or organizations that worked in those days within the system. Homelands were regarded as being part of the system. So the IFP, Inkatha Yenkululeko Yesizwe, in those days, it was not the Inkatha Freedom Party, worked within the system. And these two vied for hegemony, for control over the political ideas in the province. And if the schools or if the kids were pronouncing liberation first and education later, the belief was this was an ANC-led strategy. And going back to school was aligned with the IFP. So we think that I shouldn't say the IFP because there was no IFP in those days. So at the political level, one had to balance this tenuous relationship, try and demonstrate that going to school was not merely a political gesture, but it was to build children for their future without necessarily any political inclinations. Those would be left to themselves to choose. So that was the first difficulty. The second difficulty was, of course, that in a sense, some teachers might or would have felt that they were being undermined. How do you organize a function that they themselves are at? Were you trying to think that you can do better than they could? So there were those forces which were pulling in different directions. But one had to demonstrate that bringing the kids together, literally, was an asset. And that bringing them together under an educational banner was even a greater asset.
Sure. So that resistance must have been like seriously frightening to some that were not brave enough. What gave you the conviction to forge on, despite all this resistance?
Well, to be honest, I don't know. In a sense, I'm a stubborn character.
Of course we know that.
I have always believed that when my belief, my convictions, call that, I have always believed that when my convictions lead, let them lead. Yeah.
Was there any time, Baba, where you felt that this was no longer worth the risk?
Not really. In a sense, first of all, children voted with their feet. That was the first sign of encouragement. We never had less than 1,000 children attending on a Saturday. But the most difficult part was really to bring to their realization that hard work starts with consistency. Yeah. So it was to create this consistency in them, not only to be on a Saturday school, but to know what to read and how to read. We concentrated much more on how to read with understanding than on what to read. And part of that entailed working a lot on language. The language in those days, and still is, the language of teaching and learning is English. But language with a purpose. Yep.
Oh no, I remember very well those Saturdays English classes, and us going away on outings and coming back home, and you having us write essays about what we have seen. So I know exactly what you mean. Reading with understanding, observing so that you understand exactly what it is, and it's taken us far. Now there's a lot of noises, outside noises, your internal struggles and fears, the resistance you were getting from all these fears of life when we were starting this Saturday school. I'm interested in finding out what voices for you, either external or internal, that you had to silence so that you can remain committed to ensuring that this Saturday school or these classes continue.
Really, we didn't have to silence any voices. That never even came into my mind in particular. We undertook a task in which we believed. We undertook a cause in which we believed. Incidentally, I probably was one of the fewest people in the township who could drive anywhere in the township even even during what was called the periods of unrest, because I honestly believed that if you hadn't done anything to wrong society, there was no reason that society could harm you. Yeah.
It's a powerful one.
No, seriously. I have never believed that our lives should be shaped by societal expectations. And what is a societal expectation? A section of society. Because society never does things wholly in unison. Yeah, we just lived lives normally.
So you didn't actually even bother to hear what people had to say because you had this conviction that what you were doing was the right thing to do
Yeah.
for the society.
Do you know, to tell you the truth, I used to do quite an amount of traveling during the 1980s. In 1985, I joined the University of Natal as Maurice Webb Fellow in the Center for Social and Development Studies. And that opened a lot of avenues for me even to travel abroad. And the first thing that surprised me was how the world, in a sense, believed that apartheid ruled one's life for every minute. I might be misunderstood in this. While apartheid determined the policies of the country, where you could live and where you could work and how you could do, etc., etc., you were still an individual. You were still a human being. You were still yourself. So when I went abroad and people would ask me, how is it to live in an apartheid society? The first answer would be, the government is not my neighbor. No, seriously. And I played tennis, and I don't remember. Definitely, I couldn't play tennis anywhere that I knew. But once I was in the tennis court, the government was not there to determine whether I served double faults or not.
That's true.
Yeah. So that's how I have lived my life. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you have this Saturday school you run on a Saturday. And I remember that it wasn't just limited to Saturday. Emlazi, we grew up at M section, and in the afternoons, the neighborhood kids would come to our house, uzosifundisa isiNgisi, and other subjects. Are there any personal sacrifices that you had to make to keep this thing going?
No, and definitely no. Why? I have always believed that when you are committed to something, you always make time for it. And making that time is not necessarily a sacrifice. It's just rearranging your timetable. Yeah. I didn't have to pay out of my pocket, which I didn't have anyway, even if I wanted to. There were the sponsors that we went to. We had to devote, I never had a free Saturday, to be honest. Yeah, but I didn't call that a sacrifice. It was just a rescheduling of my commitments. Yeah.
And family-wise, how did you work around that?
Even then, I didn't have I had a wife who understood exactly what we were doing. She was a nurse educator, and she understood the value of education. So, yeah, that's that. Whether my children missed me, I don't know, but they were also part of it anyway. Yeah.
No, we were always there.
Yeah.
I can attest to that you didn't actually miss much. You were doing this, Baba, at the time. You were talking about the different political rhetorics. There was the ANC side, and then there was the Inkatha Yenkululeko Yesizwe. And you forged on despite all these rhetorics. What risk were you taking I'm talking here, did you ever feel that you were under physical threat, emotionally as well as politically, by doing what you were doing?
Not really. I remember when we also started the Umlazi Educational Committee. That was in the late 1980s, round about 89. And there was quite a lot of turmoil, even greater than, put it this way, the momentum was building up all the time. And towards the end of the 80s, kids had even decided not to wear school uniforms. They had decided to take over at times the registration and of the schools. And I remember there was a meeting in the Umlazi cinema. It was early 1990s. And the kids determined that they were going to elect a committee that was going to be responsible for carrying out a program which they thought they wanted. Unfortunately, they elected me into the committee as well, after I had given a very tough speech telling them that if they did not want to work and wanted to use leaked papers in the exams, etc., they were literally shooting themselves in the foot and cutting their own faces to spite themselves. So the first encounter was when they decided to take over the registration of learners. They call themselves learners. They're now pupils were no longer pupils, they became learners. These have ideological connotations. I have never sort of wanted to involve myself greatly into them. And in one school, they then took over and chased away the principal. And as the committee were to go and negotiate this. And the outcome of it was that we had to go to the Umlazi district, to the inspectorate, to negotiate certain arrangements in the schools, particularly regarding registration. Of course, we reinstated the principal immediately as the committee. The kids had to know that they couldn't run a school. The principal ran the school. And I had to, then the inspectorate at Umlazi, I was sent to speak to them, referred me to a Mr. Winnington Sabelo, who was a very, very staunch and strong Ingata leader, to go and negotiate with him, because he was the official appointed by the KwaZulu Department of Education to deal with these issues. He was not a teacher, nor an educator himself. And I remember going to deal with him. But also one had to strategize and know exactly how to move around. And he happened to have a friend, or some called her his second wife, who was a matron in the hospital, and her child had been in the Saturday school. And she really had known how useful the Saturday school was. So I'm saying at times one had to maneuver within the crevices, put this way, to be able to attain one's objective. But the long and short of it is that we succeeded in what we wanted to do. Schools came to normal, and one can, in retrospect, say that Umlazi was the only township in Durban that really had a continuous, normal education during those turbulent times. Yeah.
Sure. And I remember the name Wabsabelo evoked a lot of fear in people. And for you to be able to go and engage with him on such a dicey subject must have taken a lot from you in terms of courage.
We spent over 4 hours sitting in his car dealing with this issue. Eventually, anyway, we agreed that the committee chosen by the children at the cinema and the official committee appointed by the KwaZulu administration, Tuosumlas was under KwaZulu, and all schools were under that administration, could work together. And he appreciated that. We eventually ended up working together.
Wow. Now, looking back, what did that season, Baba, require of you that nothing else ever has?
Honestly, I don't even look back to it with that type of appreciation, put it that way. Yeah.
There's a lot of successful young adults that are roaming this world now because of the work that you did then, and that continues to carry them. I certainly am one of those, an example of the outcome of all the passion you had, together with those partners you had, to make sure that we are educated as children. Now, the question that I have for you in that regard is, how has your definition of legacy been shaped by that experience?
You know, Thuli, I don't know. I'm not a politically charged person. And issues of legacy or building a legacy or reputation, etc., have never really been part of my vocabulary to think about. I do things because they are necessary, and I do things because someone has to do them. And if I'm the one that's most equipped to do them at that particular time, the question I ask, if not I, then who? It's not really to be honest, I don't know. When call it the class of the 1980s and the class of 80 and 90 decided, I think it was 2019, to hold a memorial lecture at the Langeni Hotel for me. There were well over 400 people there, to say, we want to address you while you are still alive. We don't want to speak at your funeral. We are grateful for what you did to us. Therefore, this memorial lecture is in your... I was humbled but taken aback, because all what I had done was what any person in my position would have done given the circumstances in the 1980s. I mean, we couldn't allow, particularly the word educational world, to burn and do nothing about it.
Baba, I must say, as your daughter, I think you are honestly downplaying the impact you had. I think there's a lot of people that would have opted for self-gain. You said you didn't. You could have been anything. You could have been, gosh, with your brains, you could have been a CEO of a company. You could have been that, but you chose a cause and you stuck to it. And for me, I think that there's a lot that can be said about that.
Well, you are right. I think it was 1987, when the IDC, is it called the IDC? offered me a position of research director in Johannesburg, and I had to balance my interests, not really my Saturday school interests and the other things. If I moved away from Durban, what would happen to my family, etc. I could take it along with me to Johannesburg, but also I would have to change my job from, I was senior research fellow at the University of Natal, then I was not professor, to CEO. Yeah, I've had a lot of choices to make. Even Unilever, when I worked for Unilever, wanted to take me to London. In those days, it was quite an honor. Yeah, I have had to make choices but really it was a combination of personal interests and to a certain degree community interests. My position, my location in society at the time also was quite a huge influence. But again, I'm trying to run away from this concept of sacrifices. I mean, there are normal prescriptions that we have to follow as human beings in our lives. Our fate is somehow determined somewhere in the heavens about what we should do and be.
Whilst we talk about that fate that you say is determined somewhere in the heavens, what does it mean for you? Because you were building people, you were building character, you were shaping lives. What does it mean for you to build people rather than just building things?
Yeah, the world goes on because there are people. And if you think the exercise brings about good people, you do everything to prepare for a better world, put it this way. Even now, I mean, and one of the reasons I'm at the university is really to try and prepare for a better world. Yeah, it's an institution which is destined, made, paid for, sustained to build a better world. And if I can be part of that contribution to a better world, so I am. And that's why I'm still at the university. So even in those days, I wanted a better world. And as I said, the 2019 memorial lecture was a demonstration to me, of this better world, when over 400 young people said, we are where we are because we have touched our lives.
Sure. What lessons have you learned from this, from what you've done throughout your life? And what would you want your children, us, and your grandchildren in the future generations to know and to learn?
One, you do not do things because you want people to love you. They are not going to do that. And number two, do not be discouraged because you think that people do not love you for what you are doing as a result of what you observe in them, dissenting voices, criticism, and the rest. If you believe in a cause, follow your convictions. I believe in that very, very strongly. It's not that do not take heed of what people are saying, but definitely be led mostly by your convictions.
Be led mostly by your convictions. I love that. What does meaningful contribution look like today?
Meaningful contribution from whom? Or from individuals? How do individuals contribute? Really, as a child, I remember listening to, I'm not sure whether it was a preacher or somebody. You know, our lives were built around the church and the rest. Somebody who was in the sea and confronted with a situation and wanted some salvation from outside, and shouted, "Lord, what should I do?" And I think the Lord responded and said, "Cast your bucket where you are." Yes. Yeah.
So you're basically saying people must cast the bucket
Exactly.
where they
Cast
are.
your bucket
Oh,
where
wow.
you are.
Wow. Sure, that's a powerful one to end. Baba, as we close off, you are given a gift, and that is a gift of going back. And this gift takes you back to the 8-year-old Professor Paul Zulu, Paul Zulu at that time. What would you say to that 8-year-old?
I would say, which is what I said to myself, but I was not 8 at the time. Probably I've never told you or somebody, or I've told this story to some people, but I might not have told it to my family. We used to live on white farms, and we lived at a place called Lufafa Road in the McFarlane farm in Ikopo, KwaZulu-Natal. And my grandfather, who brought us up, used to own between 10 and 12 cattle at any point in time. And 2 or 3 of these would be cows, milk for milking. And there were 2 of these cows in those days. I was doing standard 5. I was 14. And I remember sitting in the valley and watching. There were 2 rivers, Magbana and the Tobogane River, which met. The place was beautiful, good grass, everything. And I remember sitting with these 2 cows. And to start with, I was never brought up where people looked after cattle and animals. I was never a head boy because the place was very organized on the farm. There were paddocks or pastures where the cattle grazed, and the places were, but you had to have some of these cattle near you because they had to be milked at any point in time. So you kept them, took them to the pastures for milking time, brought them back home, etc. So that's what I did. And I was sitting with these 2 cows and saying, hey, this is a very beautiful place, but is this where I'm going to grow, work, marry, die? No, I want to be something better. And if I want to be that something better, there were certain things I had to do. 1, I had to get my education. 2, there are certain things that go with getting a good education. You cannot be a boy that runs, a boy in town that runs around, or a boy in the village that runs around after everything. Smoke, drink, go for courtship and the other things. Certain things had not to be done. And so that was the decision I made. Now, I would go back to the 8-year-old boy and say, my little boy, if you want to grow and be something to yourself and to society, number 1, get your education. Number 2, mold your character accordingly. There are certain things you are not going to do, even if they appear pleasant at the time. That's what I would say.
And what a fantastic job that 8-year-old boy has done today. Moving from having, you could have built an empire that just served you, but you built an empire that served communities. And there are thousands, and I can say that with great conviction, of young people and people our age who are roaming this world, successful, brilliant, that were shaped and molded by you and your partners in that Saturday school. And for that, Baba, we want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for going around and defying odds. Thank you for continuing to forge on despite the resistance, despite the criticism, despite the naysayers that were saying that you shouldn't continue with this, and despite the dangers related to the politics of that world, and silencing all of that so that you can make sure that you build communities and successful people that are also going on and paying it forward. And on that note, I would like to say thank you to our viewers for watching this podcast today, and have a lovely day. Thank you, Bob.